watching. Good evening, Railfanner. Welcome to the stream. This is a special stream because we just hit 5,000 subscribers on this channel. Let me know if the music is too loud. I'm trying a different way of playing the music this time. I'm playing it on speakers to then be picked up by the mic. Because I think that's, well, it's not an ideal setup, but it means I don't have to wear headphones. I'll get some trains running in a few minutes once a few more people join. I actually turned the music down a little bit for my own sanity. Alright, well, it's been 2 minutes. I think we'll get some trains going. So, the stream before last, I introduced this little Mantua prairie that I had just finished building, but it was making this weird clunking noise. So I did some digging into it, and what I discovered was that the clunking noise... hello, Vintage Renewed. Hello, Robert. The clunking noise was because the entire frame was warped. I hadn't noticed it when assembling because it was very subtle, but it was enough that it was causing issues. So I ended up buying another one and just replacing the entire frame. And now it runs beautifully. So let's back it up and get it hooked up to a train. And then I'll catch you up on what else I've been up to. I haven't decided yet if that's going to be the permanent whistle for it or if I'm going to pick a different one. Hello, Chase's Railway Lines. Hello, Overpowered Steam. Yeah, quality. Yeah, the Mantua kits don't come with that. You have to add it yourself. In this case, I added it by swapping in parts from a ready-to-run Mantua. I have a lot of affection and nostalgia for old Mantua trains, but they are kind of an adventure to deal with sometimes. Bruh 21420, I'm sorry, but I sold the shed. It has gone to a farm where it can run around and play in the sunshine. Actually, it's gone to somebody on eBay who's going to fix it up and repair all the little issues with it that I couldn't figure out. I do still have that Riverazzi Heisler, though. Robert, yeah, I would love to have a Westport Mikado. The only problem is nobody makes a small Mikado like that in HO, unless you count brass ones, and brass is kind of a pain to deal with, so... I mean, I guess... maybe I could kit bash something. I don't know. I'll look into it. I do like the idea of having a Mikado. I don't mind doing some kit bashing. but I've got a lot of kit bashing projects going on right now that I'm trying to get done, so maybe a little ways down the road. Hello, Leviathan York. Welcome back. I saw your video today on the Athearn N-Scale 280s. I have the HO version right here. And over there, Westport 8 is also an Athearn 280, although this one's been rebuilt recently with some older MDC parts, because it also needed a frame swap for different reasons than the other one. And the spare frame that I had was an old MDC one, so I put that in and changed the wiring to accommodate it. I do like the idea of something like that, overpowered steam. And I actually do have a brass Baldwin 70-ton logging Mikado, but I already have plans for that. That's getting turned into California Western 45 rather than a Westport engine. Maybe if I can find a deal on a second one, it can be a Westport engine. But old brass, the amount of work that it takes to rebuild, I would rather put that into building something custom. Chase, the American Painted Mantua engine has been parted out for other projects. The tender for it is going on a very prestigious project that I'll talk about in a little bit. I'm rebuilding Westport number 12 again, and it's getting the tender from that engine, no longer painted in the America colors, of course. The boiler is actually going on Robert's 10-wheeler, because it needed a new boiler. So that was the first boiler spare. I have a number of spare Mantua boilers. That was the first one I could find, so that was the one I used. Actually, Robert, if you want, I can go grab that. The paint's still drying on it, but it's I've got the new stack on it, and it's looking pretty decent. So, obviously I still need to reassemble it, put the cab back on and everything, but this is the new boiler shell that I painted up for Robert's 460. Better than that rail fanner, actually. Not only a Bachmann 460, but a Bachmann low boiler 460 with the larger drivers from the high boiler version swapped onto it. I don't know if anybody here has been around long enough to see my very old video from like 5 years ago, where I swapped the drivers between the low and high boiler versions, but I'm doing that again. The downside to it is that I'm going to be retiring Westport number 13, the high boiler engine, for the time being. I was looking into rebuilding it and adding sound and touching up the paint a bit, and the more I dug into it, the worse shape I realized it was in. I have basically run that thing into the ground. It was high mileage when I got it, and I've probably put more miles on that than any other locomotive that I own. Yeah, long story short, the amount of work that it needed was probably more than just basically rebuilding it like I did with number 12. So, 13 is out of commission for the foreseeable future until I can find another high boiler 10-wheeler for parts. And meanwhile, I'm putting 13's larger drivers on 12. Which is what I always wanted to do in the first place ever since making that video. I just didn't have a spare set of drivers. And now that I do, I can finally do that. So I'm still working on it. This is not the final reveal, but if I can get the camera to focus, here is 12. Camera really doesn't want to focus. Come on. There we go. Here's 12 with the large drivers. I've also scraped the blue paint off the pipes. Because I decided I liked how it looked better with the black pipes contrasting. But I think this is going to be pretty nice. I am debating if I want to see if I can figure out some way to darken down the shade of blue on the boiler a little bit. Because it's supposed to be imitation Russia iron, but it's an even brighter blue than Bachmann used, which was already pretty excessive. So I've been debating if I could do like a slightly dark tinted clear coat over it to just darken it down a little bit without having to repaint the whole thing. But I might end up just leaving it as is. Anyway, there's that. And then this is the tender. This is the Mantua America 460 tender repainted. I've changed the trucks out. Lettered it with the label maker, obviously. This is a 3D printed oil tank. I'm not sure if I'm going to leave that on there or make a slightly lower profile one because it's pretty tall. But anyway, that's an ongoing project. Probably won't be done. Well, it might be done in time for the next video. The next video, the next like regular project locomotive video is going to be my custom Rivarossi 440, as I've mentioned on streams before. But the next video to go on the channel, which I'd forgotten about last time, is what we've been planning for a while, is going to be another trip to Providence Northern, the club layout. It's a huge HO club layout. It's gorgeous. We went there for the 4,000 subscriber special. We're going to do it again for 5,000, and I'm going to take a bunch of these engines I've been working on with me. Alright, rail faner, yes, 45 is the skunk train. Robert, yes, actually, I have your 280 right here, number 1600, and it is basically identical to the ones that I've got. That one has the sound decoder installed. It's just waiting for me to get all your other engines done so that I can send them back. And the decoder for your 460 just arrived today from Iron Plant Hobbies, so I'll get that installed as soon as possible. Coastal Texas Rail Fan, I sold the Shay. Chase's Railway Lines, most cursed engine I've seen. Look up something called the Holman Horror. It was this insurance scam that was supposed to be a new type of steam locomotive where it had like wheels stacked on top of each other. It was really bizarre. Robert, yes, I have seen Emperor of the North. I haven't watched it in a while, but yeah, there's a lot of great railroad action in that movie. And Ernest Borgnine and Marvin Lee chewing the scenery, which is always fun. Chase's Railway Lines, I think the issues with the stream last time were because of this little USB adapter dingus. Camera won't focus, but whatever. Hello, Three Spikes Railroad. So this time I have the capture card plugged directly into the USB-C port on my laptop, and hopefully that will fix the issue. I think the issue was that I had it plugged into a USB 2.0 port instead of a 3.0, and it was like running out of memory or something. I don't know. Computers confuse me, but I did a little Googling. Not that Googling works anymore. That's a whole other issue. Oh, Chase, you meant cursed model trains. Yeah. Cursed model trains. I'm always a fan of when people will like take a big boy and shorten it down to be like just the smoke box in the cab on top of like 4 wheels. That's always fun. Also saw a Bachmann G-scale boxcar with like a briefcase handle attached to the top. That was quite funny. There's a Facebook page called Model Trains with Threatening Auras that has some pretty funny cursed train stuff on there. Robert, yeah, the N-scale version of the Highboil 460 was really nice. I'm so bummed they stopped making that. I had one a while back, but it was one of the really early ones from the first production run, so it had some issues, but apparently, supposedly the later ones were absolutely fantastic. I've debated trying to track one of those down, because I am going to, at some point, build some kind of little N-scale layout. I know Robert sent me some stuff for it. Matter of fact, Robert, while you're here, I was tinkering with some of that N-scale stuff you sent me the other day, and I managed to get the Western Maryland 280 running. I had to combine this with parts from another non-running Bachmann 280 that I had, but between the two of them I was able to put together one working locomotive, And since I'm probably not going to have DCC in the N-scale layout, I took the decoder out of that. It's a Soundtrax Economy decoder, and I'm going to be using that in one of my HO engines. I've tested it, the decoder works fine. I just don't really need it in the N-scale locomotive, so I thought I'd put it to better use in an HO engine. So that might end up going in 12, but more likely it will get, more likely it'll go in that IHC mogul that I've been working on. My oldest train that I have, probably the Mantua one that's running right now, actually. Either that or the Rivarossi Heisler on the display track. But this Mantua kit is, I'm not sure exactly when it's from, probably from the 70s. Or actually, no, that's not the absolute. The oldest one that I have is, where'd it go? Okay, somewhere, oh, here it is. I have a Kosher 440, which is the predecessor to the Rivarossi ones. And these were made, I think, in like 1966. So this is probably the oldest model that I have. And it does run, it just doesn't have DCC in it, obviously. I've been getting more lately into buying like older models and upgrading them with modern motors and DCC and sound and stuff. Again, like the Prairie that's running right now. Yeah, vintage renewed, not yet. Since I already have one DCC equipped Rivarossi 440, I'm probably not going to bother building a second one unless somebody commissions one. Chase, yeah, the JW Bowker actually shares a lot of parts with these 440s. I believe the drive wheels are the same, the entire tender is the same, and it is very oversized. I think I measured it out, and the Bowker is actually almost exactly S-scale rather than HO, so it's technically an SN 3.5 model, which is S-scale 42-inch gauge. It would be pretty easy to kit bash into an SN whatever scale Montezuma, which was basically the narrow gauge version of the JW Bowker. Hello, train fan. Bachmann-Zoo Metal Geared Shay? Probably not, honestly, because it's pretty expensive and I don't really have a good use for a Shay on this layout. I don't really have a use for the Heisler either, which is why it's on the display track. I just think it's neat. But yeah, I do really like the Shays. I think they're really interesting, but unless I build like a really steep logging line, I can't really see a reason to spend the money to get one. Oh, totally off topic. Yeah, Chase, SN 3.5. It's not really a scale that has any commercial support. It's just modeling narrow gauge using HO track with S-scale models. I feel like most people, if they're going to go that far, they'll just go and do actual SN3. But if you want to use HO track and mechanisms and kit bash everything from scratch, you can do SN 3.5 and just fudge the gauge. Or, if you're in New Zealand, actually model a 3.5 foot gauge prototype. Yeah, it's considered one of the rarer narrow gauge scales, but I do think it's kind of interesting. It's kind of similar to ON30 in that way. What was I going to say? Oh yes, apropos of nothing, I put a new pilot on number 7. I thought it needed a more old-fashioned pilot. Come on, camera. So I found a brass one, and filed the edges down to the right size, painted it up, weathered it slightly, and bolted it on there. I might try and find some less conspicuous screws, but I think it looks really cool. Actually, you know what? Let's run that engine. Okay, we'll let the Prairie do one more lap and then we'll run it. Robert, oh, you did a video on the Great Locomotive Chase. Cool, I'll check that out. I just saw that movie for the first time recently. It's pretty good. Certainly good train action. I feel like the actual plot kind of moves pretty slow. Like, you can cut out the first and last 20 minutes and not really miss much, but the train scenes are great. Train fan, we ever make a video about real steam locomotives? I would love to at some point. I might go and railfan the Convoy 060. I do plan eventually to go down to the Valley Railroad in Connecticut and check that out. I don't really railfan much, but I would like to get into doing it more at some point. Hello, Model Railfan. The Prairie is an old Mantua kit that I've modified significantly. So I've retrofitted a CAN motor into it, custom painted it, put DCC and sound in it. Let me stop the train here. Okay, overshot the mark a little bit, that's fine. But yeah, this is quite an old model that I've been working on for quite a while. The tender is from a roundhouse engine. I tried to keep it as, like, recognizably a Mantua Prairie as possible, while still making it modern and relatively realistic looking. But I think it turned out pretty good. It took quite a bit of trial and error to get it to run well. But I'm quite happy with how it's turned out. Chase's Railroad Lines, yeah, the Inyo was in that movie. It played the Texas and a couple other engines, and the William Mason played the General and a couple other engines. It does kind of get obvious watching that movie after a few scenes that they've got like 2 or 3 locomotives playing like a dozen different locomotives. They just changed the nameplates. I'm just going to put this on the siding over here with number 8. Ooh, Dream HO or O engine that has been made or that you don't have. Probably a decent ready-to-run Sierra 3 that isn't the old oversized Tyco one. Or California Western 45, which I do technically have, but it's an old brass one. It's going to need a lot of work. And I am eventually, quite a ways down the road, planning on trying to scratch build an O-scale California Western 45 as well. But the fact that nobody makes a decent Sierra 3 is just absurd to me. Hello, Crazy Spud. Didn't you change your name for a while? I thought you had a different username. Are you back to Crazy Spud? Hello, Anthony. So I keep modifying stuff on this engine and saying, okay, now it's finished, now it's exactly how I want it. But I think this time it is exactly how I want it. I'm really pleased with kind of the quirky little late 19th century look I got going on it. I'm just kind of in love with this era of railroading, like just before the turn of the century, when you still had a little bit of the ornate 19th century stuff going on, but also with a little bit of like technological advancement starting to creep in. Oh, nice, Crazy Spike. Congrats on getting your channel running. Oh, trolleys. I almost forgot. I have 2 O-scale trolleys here, and I want some opinions. Yeah, Vintage Renewed 1242 is not anywhere close to done. So, I have an MTH 3-rail O-gauge trolley. This is one of the bump and go ones, so when it hits the end of the track, it reverses. And then I have the Bachmann Owen 30 trolley, which I'll pull out of the box. This is much more detailed, but it's narrow gauge. And I know I want to have a trolley line on the O-gauge layout somewhere, but I'm trying to decide if I want to make it narrow or standard gauge. Lately I've been leaning towards narrow gauge, just purely for reasons of limited available space. But before I sell the 3-rail trolley, I need to make a final decision. Train fan? No, I ended up selling that to a friend of mine. Yeah, Anthony, I think the Owen 31 looks better as well. That's probably the one I'll go with. The 3-rail one is kind of less detailed, a little bit more toy-like. My only reservation really with doing the Owen 31 is that most real street railways are standard gauge or wider. Like, the closest surviving prototype that I could find for either of those trolleys, is one in Baltimore that I think is 5-foot 4-inch gauge. But, I mean, trolleys of various gauges did exist all over the place, so I guess a narrow gauge one isn't impossible. Yeah, train fan, Owen 30 is super underrated. That's another reason why I want to do the trolley line in Owen 30, because then I'll have at least a point-to-point line where I can run other Owen 30 stuff on the layout. Because, like, I have actually quite a bit of Owen 30 stuff stashed away. I have 2 locomotives, a number of freight cars, a number of passenger cars, and I would like somewhere to run it, even if it's just an automated back and forth point to point. Oh, okay, a 3-foot trolley. So yeah, so there is a prototype. See, this is what I always say: is there's a prototype for everything, and if you look hard enough, you can usually find it. Narrow gauge is super cool. Owen 30 is super cool. I wish I had room to do a third entire layout, because I would absolutely do an Owen 30 layout. I originally had an idea that I could make the HO layout like able to be temporarily converted into Owen 30. I actually even, when I did these building flats, I actually made them easily removable. They're just on a pair of skewers that fit into little pieces of tubing back there. And the idea was that I could make a set of O-scale buildings and then just swap them out and run this as an Owen 30 layout. I just never really ended up doing that because it's pretty cramped for Owen 30. Thanks, Vintage Renewed. Yeah, I'd be really interested to see that. The Play Art 260. I'll have to look that one up. I'm not able to bring to mind immediately what that looks like. 410-4. Yeah, I know there were 410-2s. I'm not aware of a 410-4. But they're... Model rail fan. Yeah, you know what? That's totally fair. I know the third rail does bug a lot of people. Personally, I don't mind it because it has kind of like a vintage model train charm to it, and because on railroad track, you'll frequently see track that has like a guardrail for some reason, or dual gauge, or just a random piece of rail lying around. I don't know. The third rail doesn't really bother me because you do frequently see just extra rails laying around on the track. But, I mean, maybe that's just me making an excuse. The reason I like 3-rail is because it reminds me of old Lionel. That's it. It's just nostalgia and old, quirky, charming, fun model train. I was talking to a friend of mine about this the other day, but I feel like there's people who do model trains because they want to try and capture real trains in miniature, and then there's people who do model trains because they like the models on their own merits. And I think I'm a bit of both, but I don't know. To me, like, model trains specifically have a charm all their own that's completely separate from real trains. This is why I really like how some older models have, like, the bare silver metal tires on the driving wheels. Even though it exists in real life, but it's not super common. But it was very common on a lot of older model trains, and I love that look. I don't know why. It just gives me the warm fuzzies, like, ooh, I remember this from my childhood. It's the same reason people flock to see reboots of old movies. Yes, Model Rail Pen, I can run ON30 on here, and that's what I was talking about earlier with the ability to make this temporarily an ON30 layout. I intentionally made the track spacing wide enough that that ON30 trains can pass each other without hitting. So it does technically double as an ON30 layout. I would just have to swap out the buildings and stuff. And I kind of abandoned this idea halfway through building it because there's not really any convenient way to swap out the lighthouse. Like, I can easily pick it up, but, like, what, am I going to build a really cramped little O-scale lighthouse that would fit in the same spot? I guess I could do that. And, of course, the drive-in theater lot is kind of too small for O-scale cars. So I had high hopes for it being 2 layouts in one, and I kind of gave up on that idea. Crazy Spud, the Prairie, it's a kit that I've had laying around for over a year. I just recently got around to finally assembling it and customizing it and painting it and stuff. But over the past few weeks I've been working on it. I think it showed up a couple of streams ago, but it was having some mechanical problems. So I finally got that sorted out. Hello, Sebastian. Welcome. Yeah, there's definitely a charm to vintage Icho trains. But yeah, I've been working on this Prairie, trying to make it... I put DCC and sound in it. I've been trying to make it operable and make it up to the standards of the rest of my fleet. And I think it's pretty much done. It's pretty much the way I want it now. Oh, the weird play art German mogul thing. I would assume there's a German prototype for that. I don't really know anything about European trains. But maybe I'll do some research into it. It's a very crude model regardless. And they did usually pair it with an American tender that doesn't match at all. But I would assume that model does correspond to a German locomotive of some type. Oh, Sebastian, you'll love this. We're running number 7. I do think it looks really good with that pilot. Yeah, Crazy Spud, Prairies are super underrated. That's why I tried to kit bash one out of a Bachmann 280 years ago. That was kind of like my first really in-depth kit bash, and realistically, it left a lot to be desired. Like, it didn't really hold up any longer than it took to make the video. Yeah, they are super cool. So I'm glad I finally have an actual good one. 2319. Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty realistic backstory, I think, because, like, especially later in their career, steam engines had tenders swapped around all the time. Yeah, the play arts mostly didn't work out of the box. I had one when I was a kid, and I never got it to work right. I think it had a pretty badly cracked gear. Wasn't really worth putting any effort into. Welcome, Overland Route. I've actually recently just started experimenting with ESU lock sound. I think there's a bit of a learning curve, because to me it seems much more difficult to program than soundtracks or TCS. A friend of mine has a lock programmer, so we were able to load a sound file onto it, but just trying to get stuff like the back EMF and the chuff rate dialed in perfectly, I've just found very frustrating. I know a lot of people love lock sound, and it certainly is very capable, but I think I am just not at the knowledge level I need to be to get the most out of it. So I'm probably going to stick with Tsunami and WoW Sound for the time being. HO scale narrow gauge is super cool. I just wish it wasn't so expensive. Like, you look at like the Blackstone HO and 3 stuff, and it's absolutely gorgeous, but it costs as much as the really nice G scale. So, being able to afford HO and 3 would be a pipe dream for me, I think. The 440. I wouldn't worry about it too much. I've found that trains have to be pretty poorly packed to sustain severe shipping damage. I have seen a few bad cases, but most of the time any damage that occurs is just because it's not packed with enough cushiony stuff. If you use basically all the bubble wrap you can get your hands on, you're probably fine. Crazy Spud, if you want to be able to load custom sounds, I'm pretty sure ESU Lock Sound is the only one that can do that, but you do need the Lock Programmer gadget. Remodeling, or I'm assuming you mean remotoring locomotives in the Roundhouse 280. So I actually did put a new motor in this one the other day, and what I used was just one of the little Mishima 050 size motors. I thought that I had one sitting around here that I could show you, but you know what? I'll show you the one that's in Robert's 460 chassis. So it's one of these. CV Backshop on eBay uses these in a lot of their remotoring kits. I don't think they have one specifically for that engine, but you can also just get these motors by themselves. I think Trains.com has some. But yeah, those will fit in there. You just gotta either make a custom mount or just like glue them in, which is what I did. Yeah, Blackstone would be cool if they went in production again. Sebastian, the yellow station I found at a train show many years ago for $5. I have no idea who made it. I don't know if it's a kit. I don't know if it's scratch built. It is wooden, I'm pretty sure. But it's a charming little station, and I couldn't say no for $5. So I'm happy to have it, even though I know absolutely nothing on the history of it. I think it even has a partial interior. Farmington, unfortunately, all of my 10-wheelers are out of commission at the moment. 12 is getting rebuilt, but it is not yet able to run. So tonight we've got various other wheel arrangements, but no 10-wheelers. Crappy Studios, the measurements, let me see. I don't remember the exact ones, but I can actually just measure it real quick. This is a 3D printed mount that I made. I end up basically designing a new one for each locomotive because, especially with older models, the dimensional tolerances are never perfect. But I think the motor sits at, I want to say like a 7-degree angle. Let me see if I can pull up the 3D file that I made for it. Crazy Spud, we were running the Prairie a little bit ago. We can run it again. Maybe I'll swap it back onto the train pretty soon. Okay, yeah, I think the motor's sitting at about a 9-degree angle. What I like to do is make the top of it the top of the like wedge slightly curved, so I can fine tune the exact angle of the motor as I'm gluing it in. I didn't do that on this one because it didn't end up being necessary, but I do that on some of them when I'm having trouble with the gear mesh. Sebastian, yeah, we can run the River Aussie 4-4. I haven't run that one yet tonight. We'll take that for a few laps and then I can run the Prairie again. And once again, I've completely overshot the mark. Actually, you know what? Let's back this train into the yard and we'll run the River Aussie 440 with some passenger cars. Model Rail fan, the motor in the Roundhouse 280 isn't bad at all, especially like the later Ready to Run versions. The old kit versions had an open frame motor that was really noisy. So if you're replacing one of those, I would definitely use a can motor. But if you get one, that's like the Athearn made ones from the early 2000s onward, those have pretty good motors. So in that case, you shouldn't have to replace it. In this case, I found that the TCS Wow Sound decoder was having trouble calibrating properly with the stock motor because it's geared very slow, and Wow Sound is kind of picky about that. So I put in the faster motor purely to get that to work. But in most cases, it's fine. Actually, you know what? I'm just going to leave this engine in the yard. And because the turntable is not currently working, I'll just put this on the track by hand. One of these days, I want to completely rebuild the turntable. Mantua open frame motors are better for vintage standards than the roundhouse ones. I don't really have enough experience with either to have an opinion on that, so I'll just say, sure, why not? I agree. Monorail fan. So the turntable has had a number of issues that have gotten worse over time. It's one of those cheap Atlas ones that has like the mechanical system that's supposed to align it every time, but it really doesn't work very well. It has like a bit of slop in it. I don't know if you can see that, but it's enough slop that the rails don't necessarily align properly every time. And in addition to that, power to the track on the turntable is supplied by some sliding contacts underneath the turntable deck. And those are very difficult to get to and clean, and they do seem to get dirty and lose contact over time. So there's just a number of compounding issues that have led me to stop bothering to try and use the turntable. And also because the rails are slightly recessed into the surface, they're extremely difficult to clean. So my eventual plan... Hello, Kyle. My eventual plan is to basically scratch build a custom turntable with a custom indexing system that works better than the mechanical Atlas one and doesn't have any slop in it. I'm thinking I might try and do something with magnets. So like the motor mechanism will have a little bit of slop in it, and then as it comes around, the magnets will snap it exactly into place. But I'm still tossing around ideas for that. I haven't started building anything yet. Farmington, I've actually converted this one to have the motor in the engine. It took a lot of work, and I had to basically scratch build most of the chassis. But if you look in between the engine and tender as it comes around here, there is no drive shaft. It does have a motor inside the boiler. So it takes a lot of work, but it can be done. But if you want something like that, I would just buy the new Bachmann one. Chase, the Rivarossi 040 is currently taken apart, waiting on a motor swap, because I wanted to try and add a cab interior to it. That's one of those projects that's kind of been sitting half-finished for a long time, and I'll get to eventually. I did find a backhead that will work for it. I just haven't gotten to installing it yet, and I haven't found a motor that's small enough and the right shape to fit in there. So eventually the Rivarossi 040 will be back. The 260 and the 462 that I reviewed, I ended up selling to a friend of mine. He's in the. He might show up in the chat later. His name's Ricardo. Yeah, some of the engines I've reviewed I still have. Some of them I have moved on. If I kept every engine I've ever reviewed, I'd have way too many. But I try to find good homes for them. Farmington, I've looked into the Walthers turntable, but it's a little bit too big for the space I have. The reason why I chose the Atlas one was because it's 9 inches in diameter, which just barely is able to fit inside this 18-inch radius circle, and still have... Hello, Will's skill. And still have enough room for stalls long enough to hold the locomotives that actually fit on the turntable, which is most of them, not all of them. So I think I'm going to have to build a custom one that's the same diameter as the Atlas one, but has a better mechanism. Hello, the New Haven Foamer. Kyle Stevens, I think the one you're thinking of is this one. I have the motor kit attached to it, and I actually replaced it with a different motor that doesn't even fit in the little shed. You can see there, I think that's a motor out of a CD player. I put that in because it was quieter. But yeah, when you buy these, they have a little crank handle. the tail rotor motor from the large helicopter. I think even the tail rotor motor in that helicopter was too big to fit in a train, but also that helicopter has been gotten rid of. I think I tossed that out when I moved because it just wasn't going to sit in there. Oh, the Keebri one. I'll have to look into that. I'm not familiar with that one. Disneyland Railroad or Dollywood? I have thought about trying to build a Walter E. Disney in G-scale on a Bachmann Big Hauler chassis. But, okay, what is squeaking? Something on this locomotive I think is squeaking. It may need some oil. Where was I? Oh, Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania, nice. That's on my bucket list for sure. I want to go there at some point. Anyway, I know a guy who knows a guy who works in real life on the Walt Disney World Railroad. Apparently, the blueprints for the Walter E. Disney 10-wheeler are a closely guarded corporate secret. It's weird because they have published the blueprints for some of their engines, but apparently not all of them. So I kind of gave up on that idea. I'm sure I could get close to it, but if I'm only going to get close to it, then I might as well just pick another prototype that I can get closer to. Because I'm not that invested in it being a Disney engine. I just wanted a quaint-looking 19th century 10-wheel. Hello, just a teenage rail fan. Ooh, old model railroaders. I have a bunch of those from the 60s and 70s in a box somewhere. Somebody gave them to me. I haven't read most of them, but there is some cool stuff in there. The New Haven, it is not because I converted it to not be tender drive, but it was originally tender drive. These Rivarossi ones normally have the motor in the tender. This one, with great effort and some frustration, I managed to squeeze a motor into the boiler, so it's no longer tender drive. But it's not really something I'd recommend because it was a ton of work. I had to fabricate pretty much the whole chassis, and if you want something like that, you can just buy the new Bachmann one. I mostly just did this out of curiosity to see if it could be done, and it could be done, and I'm quite pleased with it. I think it turned out well, and it runs decently, but if I could have gone back in time and told myself, yeah, this is possible, then I probably would have said, oh yeah, you know what, that's cool, I'm not going to bother then. So, it's doable, but there are much easier ways to get your hands on a decent 440. Crazy Spud, yeah, I do still have the Bachmann one. I currently have it apart because... Oh wait, are you talking about the old tooling Bachmann one or the new tooling one? The old tooling one's sitting on a shelf up here. I don't really run that. The new tooling one, I'm trying to figure out how to squeeze a sound decoder, a speaker, and a keep alive into it. I think what I'm going to have to do is use the little micro tsunami. And I don't have a spare one of those at the moment. I'll have to order one. So right now that one is still waiting on parts. One of these days I'll get around to it, but I have so many projects going right now. I have a bad habit of starting projects, and then before they're finished, starting more projects. So I end up with a lot of half-finished projects that sometimes it takes me months or years to get around to. Like that Prairie kit, I bought that over a year ago, and just now got done building. Yeah, the old tooling 440s do have a certain charm to them. They just don't perform that well. I do wonder what's squeaking on there. It didn't used to do that. It comes around here, I'm going to take a look at it. I could try to double head the Americans. They're not speed matched, so I'd have to manually synchronize them. Kyle Stevens, the most recent run of the Athearn Moguls are pretty nice. You could look into getting one of those. Alright, what is squeaking on here? It's not the cars. Pushing it back and forth doesn't seem... Oh, that did something. Is it the tender wheels? Yeah, it's the tender wheels. Okay, I just need to oil those. This has tender trucks off of a Mantua General on it. And the bearings are metal on metal, so they do squeak occasionally. And they're not the original wheels, because I put the Rivarossi axles in there, because they're smaller diameter, and the Mantua ones were hitting the underside of the frame. Alright, that should sort out the squeak. And that's reverse. Another Three Rivers Rambler. Usually the crank pin's interesting. I do usually oil the crank pins when I'm oiling other stuff, but I rarely find that noise from them is a problem. I find 9 times out of 10, if an engine is squeaking, it's pickup wipers on the drivers. The Alco Mogul, I've had a number of those pass through my hands. You may have to be a little more specific. If you're talking about the old Westport 22, that one is basically parts for other ones. I have 2 unlettered ones on my desk right now that I'm fixing up. I need to find new wiring harnesses for them, because I got a really good deal on these as a pair, because, like Bachmann engines tend to do, the tender wiring harnesses are completely chewed up. Bachmann uses the flimsiest little wires for these things, and they all inevitably go at some point. So I have 2 of these Moguls sitting around, and then again, project I'll get around to. Tycho Mantua Prairie, where can I get a different smoke box door? That is a good question. So there's 2 different versions of these Prairies. The one that I have here is the original version, which has a die-cast boiler. It's all one big solid piece, including the smoke box door, so there's really no way to replace it. You would have to grind it off and glue something else on it. However, if you get one of the later ones, they had a plastic boiler, and then you can just pop it off and replace it with whatever you want. And hold on a second. I don't have the entire boiler for it. So, let's zoom out. So, that's the old version. This is the newer version. You can tell the difference because it's got 3 domes. Come on, camera. And this one is a plastic boiler with a metal weight inside. And this one, you can take the boiler front off and you can put various other ones on there. I know, I'm pretty sure an IHC Mogul boiler front will fit on here because I've seen someone swap it the other way. And if that is the case, then I think a Bachmann Decapod one should fit as well, because that fits the IHC Mogul. I have an IHC Mogul here that I'm working on that has the Bachmann, come on camera, focus, that has the Bachmann Decapod front end on it. And if we line these up, yeah, that would totally fit. So yeah, this would fit an IHC Mogul boiler front or a Bachmann Decapod boiler front. So you've got some options there. Hello BD Vids. Yeah, the 262 is super cool. I'm quite pleased with how this turned out. It's a really old Mantua kit. New Haven Steam would be cool. snowplow. Snowplows are cool. The only thing is, if you put a snowplow on model trains, I feel like you have to have some snow on the layout, otherwise it looks a little out of place. But I guess there are some, like the Rio Grande engines would just have snowplows like year round. Three Rivers Rambler, the sound decoder I've got in here, well, I had to do quite a bit of surgery on the engine to make it fit, because these are tender drive normally. I had to untender drive this one, which was a lot of work. But the sound decoder is the Soundtrack's Economy, which is like the cheaper version of the Tsunami. It doesn't have as much of a selection of sounds, and it's missing a few features, but it's still a pretty decent little decoder. And it's cheaper than a Tsunami. So it's a Soundtrack's Economy, and the speaker is just a generic sugar cube. I've got it mounted in the tender floor facing down with a 3D printed enclosure. BD Vids, well, anything you should know if you get the 262, it's an old Mantua engine, and it will... If you're not familiar with old model trains, you may be surprised by a few things. It's heavy. The electrical and mechanical situation is fairly crude compared to modern models. But if you're willing to put the work in, you can make them run pretty decently, especially if you put a CAN motor in them. But it's going to have all this... as far as old model trains go, they're pretty solid, but they are going to have the same issues as any other old model train. Crazy Spud, if you want to do a high-mounted headlight, I mean, obviously, if you get the older die-cast version that has one, like mine, I just had to drill a hole in the headlight for an LED. But if you get the plastic version, I would see if you can track down a Bachmann Decapod front end with the high-mounted headlight. I think you can order them from the Bachmann parts department. Any tips for making it run well? I mean, same as you find for any other old model train. Get a decent remotoring kit for it. The CV Backshop one is decent. Although on the prairies, the motor would stick out the back of the cab a little bit because the flywheel's too long. So I ended up not doing that. I just custom mounted a CAN motor with the worm gear directly on the shaft. It's gonna take some tinkering no matter what. But if you really want to get the old motor running, you can. Just clean all the contacts and the commutator really well and lubricate it, and hopefully it'll run. They're usually okay if they're not too worn out. They just don't play nice with D6C. But there are people who know a lot more than I do about restoring old model trains. There's a few channels, SMT Mainline, Classic Model Trains. There's lots of info out there. I tend to not bother too much trying to restore like the original motors and stuff, because I just swap them out anyway, because I want to put DCC in it. But if you want to like make it run as it did originally, there's people who can tell you how to do that. 78 years old, wow, what model is it? Yeah, Train World should have plenty of those new Athearn 260s. Those are pretty nice runners. High-mounted headlight on the Northern and 410-4. I mean, there's no reason not to. It's a little bit unusual to see a big engine with a high-mounted headlight, but I mean, the Penske had a lot of them. Hello, Gerald. Yeah, I'll have to do some more research on the turntable stuff. I think I will probably end up building something custom, because it's one of those things where once you have a 3D printer and you know how to design stuff for it, suddenly that seems like a solution to every problem. Oh, you want it to be DCC for club layout running. Yeah, in that case, you're definitely going to want to swap a CAN motor into it. If you don't mind the motor being visible in the cab, you can just get the CV Backshop kit. They usually include a little wooden wedge to put the motor on. I usually 3D print one, but you could use the wood one and just follow the instructions they include. I think it would be fine. The only tricky part with those is getting the gear lined up exactly right, but that's going to be the case regardless. Mars Light would be cool. 1987 and 95. I'm not super familiar with that era of Lionel. Ooh, original early production NBC 060. Those are super cool. One of these days, like now that I'm kind of on a roll with taking old models and modernizing them with DCC and sound and can motors, I do kind of want to tackle one of those NBC 060s at one point. I think that would be really cool. Yeah, BD Vids, if you don't mind having the motor visible in the cab, then I would just go on eBay and get the CV Backshop remotoring kit. And follow the instructions in there. And then you can just install a DCC sound decoder like a regular engine. I have a Soundtrax Current Keeper in mind. TCS called it a Keep Alive. Soundtrax calls it a Current Keeper. Basically the same thing. It's just a pack of supercapacitors with some special circuitry that allows them to keep the engine running through brief power interruptions. And since pickup on older models isn't always the greatest, I would recommend doing that. Hello, Red Dead! Welcome! We're just running the custom Rivarossi 440. I might switch back to the Prairie pretty soon. Also, I got your email, Red Dead. I haven't responded yet, but your cat is adorable. Ooh, a Brass 280. That'll be a whole other adventure to work on. Brass is... Working on old Brass is like working on old die-cast model trains, but turned up to 11. Oh, you're turning a Pacific into a Hudson. That'll be cool. Theoretically, you should be able to just swap the trailing truck. But I don't know if there's more to it than that. It's been a while since I tinkered with one of those. I know Mantua did that. They turned their Pacific into a Hudson. I tried to pass it off as a New York Central Hudson, which it didn't look anything like. But yeah, maybe I'll switch back to the Prairie. Maybe we'll run into the Prairie with the passenger cars. Excuse me. Thank you, Red Dead. Yeah, the Rio Grande Overtons are nice. I've been running these a lot more than my old set of Overtons since I got them. They were sold as a set of 4, but there's one more car with a different road name, with a different name and number. I found one of those on eBay. Actually, maybe we should run number 8. We haven't run that yet on this stream. Well, the Prairie's in front, so we'll run the Prairie first. Ooh, a G-scale layout. That's very cool. Ooh, a Weaver O-scale Hudson. Those are super cool. I want to get a Weaver locomotive and see if I like them, because there seems like a lot of really gorgeous looking models for almost suspiciously low prices compared to other O-scale brands. Oh, nice, Crazy Spud. That'll be a really cool project. Red Dead. Yeah, good luck with the wood load. I haven't bothered to ever Dremel one of those out. I just weathered them. Yeah, Tamiya Glosper and the Russian Iron might be a good idea. That would give it a shinier finish. Linny, yes, this is HO steel. What's funny is I find the airbrush Tamiya clear coats actually make a glossier finish than the rattle can ones. I think because it's easier to control how they go on and get a nice even layer. The acrylics, I know, I haven't messed with the lacquers, but the acrylics self-level really well. Speaking of Southern, anybody seen 4501 back in green? Man, it looks so good. I really wish it was closer to me. I'd love to go see it, but it's like a multi-day drive. Oh, don't worry, Crazy Spud. You could definitely have picked a harder project. You could have tried to untender drive a Rivarossi 440. That was pretty tricky. Kyle Stevens, I've dabbled in both NCE and Digitrax. Right now I'm using NCE, and I'm pretty happy with it. So I've got a power cab. I ended up removing the scroll wheel from this one because I replaced the encoder like 3 times and it just quit working, and I never used it anyway, so I just put a piece of styrene in there. But the buttons work fine. I've got that, and I've got one of these NCE throttles with a little knob, which I actually prefer using. But I like NCE. It seems to be a little bit more intuitive than Digitrax and has fewer, like, kind of weird bugs. Hello, Gilded Rail. Oh yeah, I did see 611's new paint scheme as well. Gerald Ford, if the Southern 45-1's only 2 hours away, you should absolutely go see it. I'm in Massachusetts, so it's way too far for me to go there and back in a day. Linny, I built this layout. I started building it during the COVID pandemic, during lockdown in 2020, and probably took 2 or 3 years of working on and off to get to how it looks today, but I haven't really changed a whole lot since then. Oh, nice, Red Dead. You finally got the number plate on 473. I was wondering how that was coming. I look forward to seeing that on your channel, too. Thanks, Lenny. It's been a labor of love. It's definitely, like, I can see places where I could have done better on the scenery, but I'm too lazy to go back and fix it, so it is what it is. Yeah, 262 on a passenger train. Well, you know what? It's actually... going back to, there's a prototype for everything. The harbor scene on this layout is loosely based on the Oregon Coast Scenic Railroad. And they do run McLeod 25 with passenger cars, so... it's kind of poetic destiny. Kyle Stevens, it's my first layout to have finished scenery, but I built a number of layouts before that only had partial or no scenery. The one before this was called the Red Oak Railway, which is where I got the name for the channel. All-weather cab would be really cool. Give it a little bit of a Canadian look. How much it costs to add sound to an engine that already has DCC? So the thing is, adding sound to an engine that already has DCC versus one that doesn't is pretty much the same cost, because you need a sound... The sound is part of the DCC decoder, so if you're going to add it, you got to take the old decoder out. So usually a decent sound decoder is around $100, and then on top of that, you need a speaker. I usually add a keep alive capacitor, which helps make it less sensitive to dirty track, and on some older locomotives, it's a requirement for it to run well. And depending on how old the engine is, sometimes you need a new motor. But if you're looking for somebody to do it for you, I can do that. I do commissions, so send me an email, redoaktrains@gmail, and we'll talk. Dalton Cypher, this is an old Mantua 262. I've done a lot of work to it to bring it up to modern standards and put DCC and sound and a modern motor in it. But it's an old kit. It's like from the 70s. Detail-wise, it holds up decently well as long as you don't mind molded-on details. Red Dead Mandela affected yourself. See, that's funny because I could have also sworn that 119 had white walls and the tender wheels because it's got them on the drivers, right? I'm gonna look this up now because it's gonna bother me. Does 119 not have white walls on the tender? By golly, it doesn't. They're just red all the way to the edge. Huh. Well, learn something new every day. What sealer do I use? Honestly, I've kind of stopped bothering to use sealer. I used to use... it was some acrylic matte clear coat. I think it was Vallejo. It might have been Liquitex. But I realized after a while that it wasn't really making that much of a difference. The white wall still chipped off after a while. So I kind of just stopped bothering. I just touch them up when they chip off. It's not ideal, but I've yet to find a better solution. The thing is, it's not really... It's not really the surface that's the problem. Like, the paint itself is fine. And especially since I switched to the Sharpie brand paint pens for white walls, the paint itself holds up okay. The problem is that it's on bare metal, and paint just doesn't really stick to bare metal very well, unless it's over a large area with a rough surface that it can grab onto. So when you're doing white walls, it's going on bare metal, it's going on a very smooth surface, and it's covering a very small area. It's a very thin line. Oh, Heist is streaming right now. Dang, why are you all watching me? No, I'm just kidding. I appreciate that you're here, but yeah, definitely, if you want to watch Heist, go watch Heist. What was I saying? Oh, right, the white walls. So yeah, it's kind of the worst possible conditions for paint to stick, and I haven't really found a good way to deal with it. I think train manufacturers use some kind of super durable paint that sticks to metal better, but at the same time, I have also seen the white wall paint flake off on factory painted models, so I think there's just not really a good way around that. It's just kind of a necessary evil to have to touch them up periodically. Either that, or just leave it on the track and never touch it. Because it's mostly putting stuff on the track that chips the white walls, because the wheel, like the edge of the wheel, scrapes against the rail when you're setting it down and you don't have it aligned right. But if you just leave them on the track all the time, they're usually fine. That simulator guy, I have never heard of that brass manufacturer, so unfortunately I cannot help you there. Thanks, Red Dead. Yeah, paint hates sticking to metal. I've already had to touch up the white walls on this like 3 times just because handling it. Granted, I was like turning it over and doing mechanical work on it. Oh yeah, an etching primer. That's probably what they use. Yeah, it is kind of prototypical, but I like to make my engines look nice and well maintained, so I usually try and touch up the white walls when I need to. But yeah, paint directly on metal. I'm kind of paranoid because this Prairie number 18 has a fully die-cast metal boiler, and I'm kind of worried that eventually the paint's going to start flaking off of that, as it tends to do on the factory-painted ones. So I'm trying to handle it as little as possible. I did rough up the surface and clean it really well before I painted it. but there's only so much you can do. Gilded Rail, so far, we've run the Prairie that's running now, we've run the River Rossi 440, and we've run my modified Spectrum 440, which is over there. I'm thinking next we'll probably run number 8, because we haven't run that yet. Yeah, all good, James, no worries. I have a couple other commissions I need to finish before I take on any new ones anyway. So, whenever you're able to get back to me is fine. Crazy Spud, does anybody make a model? I'm assuming that's U.S. Army Transportation 280. I think... Is it Fleischmann or Trix? There's some European company that I'm pretty sure makes it, but it's tender drive. Oh, Roku, that was the one I was thinking of. Oh, and Rapido UK did one too. Interesting, I didn't know that. Somebody should turn one of those into the Great Smoky Mountains 1702. That'd be a cool kit bash. Speaking of which, I found out recently the Great Smoky Mountains Railroad, the line is the same former Southern branch line that's modeled in the game Railroader. I think even the town names are the same. So if you play Railroader, what you're running on is the Great Smoky Mountains Railroad, which is pretty cool. How do I make the custom Red Oak and Westport logos? So I've done it a couple different ways. The one that I did on here on the 060, that I designed it using image editing software and printed it out on water slide decal paper. The reason why I haven't made a video on that and why I don't generally recommend it is that that stuff is an absolute pain to work with and to get good results from. You can see on here actually that the actual black toner didn't really lay down thick enough, so I kind of feathered the edges with paint, and it looks okay in most lighting, but like when you look at it straight on like this, you can tell that it's not ideal. Three Rivers Rambler, no, it's fine. My email is redoaktrains@gmail.com. Yeah, so the decal paper is like, usually if I want to do a little logo like this, I just cover the whole page in them and print that, because there's a good chance that the majority of them are not going to turn out good enough to use. Like, the toner doesn't like to stick to the paper. When the toner does stick to the paper, cutting the edges makes it flake off. When it manages to survive all the way onto the model, sometimes it won't stick, sometimes it'll wrinkle, sometimes it'll dry, and then weeks or months later it'll come loose and fall off. It's just a huge pain, so I don't really recommend that stuff. The clear version seems to be a lot less troublesome than the white version, so if you have to do it, I would say paint the surface white and then use the clear decal paper on top of it. But even the clear stuff is really finicky, and you can't really do it over rivets because it's so thick that microsol doesn't work on it. The way that I did it on the O-Gauge Red Oak number 3, I tried something a little different, and I got some vinyl printable label paper that's just self-adhesive. So it's much thicker than decals, so again, can't do it over rivets, and the edge is a bit more visible. I've had some issues with that peeling up at the edges, but I think that's just because I clear coated over it, and the clear coat shrank and made it curl. So if you don't clear coat over it, I think it would probably be fine. You just have to find a way to disguise the edges. Like, put like a piece of decorative lining along the edge or something, like I did for the Red Oak one, and then cut just to the outside of that, kind of like what I do with the Label Maker. And thank you, Austin. So if we look at, let's see if I can find one. Yeah, here we go. If we look on the Spectrum 440 here, if the camera will focus, what I mostly do for lettering is I just use a Brother P-Touch label maker. So you can just type in the text, pick a style, pick an outline if you want one, and then it just prints out on these little plastic labels that you can stick on. Like all the others, won't go over rivets, and the edge is kind of visible, but as long as you do a line around the edge and cut it just to the outside of that line, it hides the edge pretty well. Now these are very glossy, whereas the printed labels are very flat finish, so one or the other might be a better choice than what you need. Also with the label maker you can do gold, if you get a gold label cartridge, but they're so much quicker and easier than any other method I've tried, and they look decent enough that that's what I use most of the time. The only exception is like the number on the side of the cab here, that's a Woodland Scenics dry transfer. But I wouldn't bother trying to do an entire word with those, because they're just like one letter at a time. And you can sometimes get away without trimmer on the edge, like, well, this one here I did with clear decal paper over gold paint. That was a huge pain. But like on the Prairie, that is done with the label maker, and I just cut as close to the edge of the text as I could. So under certain lighting you can still see the edge, but it's usually pretty inconspicuous. And that's, it's still not an ideal way to do it, but it's the best compromise I've found. And I went over that in a video previously. I think it's called like How to Decorate a Steam Engine or something like that. Have a good one, Crazy Spud. Yeah, go have fun. Railroads Online is honestly pretty decent in single player on the Pine Valley map. It's just multiplayer on the larger maps that make it really buggy. But yeah, it is a fun game. I still play it from time to time. And then going back to this, the numbers on the cab are also Woodland Scenics dry transfers. Lately I've been using those mostly for numbers, and then just using the label maker for the lettering. But yeah, since it has some thickness to it, and it has a glossy finish, and because it's plastic, it's like a shiny Scotch tape type of plastic, you can't clear coat over it because it won't stick, so you're stuck with whatever finish it is. But it is quite durable, at least. But yeah, most of my custom lettering is done with that. You just can't do custom logos. So for custom logos, right now, I would say use the label paper, just don't clear coat over it. That's the best advice I can offer, I'm afraid. And if you're doing something round like this, maybe see how close you can cut around the edge of the circle. If I was going to do it again, I'd probably do it that way. But I have yet to find a method of doing custom decals that is reliable enough and non-frustrating enough that I would recommend it. But yeah, custom decals are always a pain. That's kind of why I chose the style for what the Westport lettering, where it has like a little box around it, because that makes an easy way to disguise the edges. Yeah, Red Dead, that's another reason why I don't like water slides. Especially trying to do one letter at a time. That's why I don't bother doing that with the dry transfers, because I just know I would never be able to get them lined up to my satisfaction. It's hard enough just to get two numbers to line up with each other. Yeah, Gilded Rail. The Railroads Online series that we did, I had high hopes for it, but the game itself was just too buggy, so I think Railroader is going to be a more practical way to do it. Although I do wish there was a game that we could lay our own tracks in. I'm really looking forward to Century of Steam. Hopefully that'll be what Railroads Online should have been. Oh, a 3D printed S160 shell for a Spectrum 280 frame. That'd be cool. Isn't the Spectrum 280 a bit large and chunky for that, though? Oh, you're doing Xbox. Yeah. I know Red Dead plays on PlayStation. Certainly check the Discord server. I don't know if anybody has it on Xbox. I've only played it on PC. I don't have a game console. I don't really play enough games to justify one. Alright, shall we run number 8? I'm going to put these cars back in the yard and bring the freight back out. So right here, you probably can't see it on the camera, but that 440 is parked really, really close to the adjoining track, so hopefully it doesn't... There's like literally a millimeter of clearance there. So, I really gotta get the turntable working so I can put trains on there and stop trying to shove stuff around in the yard. But what I'm gonna do see. How's this going to work? Okay, let's move number 8 forward. Yeah, you're good. You're good. You're good. You're good. I got to put that on the soundboard. I keep forgetting I have a soundboard. Okay, so let's move number 8 forward. And then we can put number 7 where number 8 currently is. Red Dead, a number of things are wrong with the turntable. The main one is that the electrical contacts underneath are dirty and I have to disassemble the entire thing to replace them, or to clean them. The other issue is that there's a bit of slop in the mechanism, so the rails don't align perfectly. And I just ran through an open switch. And short-circuited the entire layout. Let's maybe move forward a bit more. All aboard function. What does that do? Is it like an announcement? TGM, I do have a server, but it's only for people that I'm playing games with actively. It's not a public server, because I don't have the time or inclination to moderate a public server. I had let a few random people join, but I realized pretty quickly that if it was going to be a public server, it was going to take way more moderation than I had time to do. So, at the moment, it's just a private server for people who are on the game streams. So all aboard. Well, you know what? This has a soundtracks decoder. We should try that. What is it? Function 23 or 21? Once we get this parked, I'll try it. Okay. Now I gotta try to remember how to get to the higher functions on a power cab. Okay. Is it option? No. Shift? No. Nope, that's programming. Anybody know how to access the higher numbered DCC functions on a power cab? Because I cannot figure it out. Maybe I have to go into cab parameters and set the option key to do that. Nope, that didn't do anything. Alright, well, we may not be able to try that because I can't figure out how to get to the higher functions on the power cab, so it is what it is. Shift 0. Oh! Thank you, TGM, that did it. Okay, so 21. I don't think that did it. Try 23. Hey, there it is. Alright, well, for the record, the all aboard is function 23. I don't know if that's audible on stream, but rest assured, it does work. Button at the bottom with a 1020. No, it's got a button for 28 or 128 speed steps. But it's fine, I found it. Alright, let's connect number 8 to this train. Now, I did figure out, actually, I really like the auto bell feature on soundtracks where you can set it to just ring the bell for a few seconds when you start moving. I did discover deep in the TCS WoW Sound wiki that it has an auto bell function too, and I managed to enable it. You have to go like 4 layers deep in the indexed CVs. But I did find it. Works a little differently from the soundtracks one, because the TCS one, instead of it being timed, it just rings it as long as you're moving below a certain speed step. So it does it when you start and when you stop, and if you keep moving very slowly, it'll keep ringing. Oh, butter. That was really smooth. Okay, let's get going. I'm going to start using that term, buttering the bread, for coupling really smoothly. That's like an aviation thing, where people used to talk about a really smooth landing as buttering the bread. TCS doesn't have oil fire, sounds interesting. Yeah, since this is an oil burner, I keep meaning to just turn the shoveling sound volume all the way down. I guess I've gotten around to it. Oh, the GR&I boxcar. Yeah, it is neat. Yeah, I found that at a train show for like $5 or something. Replaced the trucks, replaced the couplers, did some work to make it run smoothly, and now it's a really nice little boxcar. I really like it. I think on these trucks it sits a little bit higher than it did originally, but it was super low before. So it still is pretty low compared to my other boxcars. So SIRR, it really depends on which manufacturer. So with TCS WoW Sound and Soundtrax Tsunami and Econami, each chip comes preloaded with a selection of whistle sounds, usually between a couple dozen, and I think Soundtrax had a lot of them. I think Tsunami has like 90 different whistles. TCS, I think, has probably, I don't actually know, like 60 or something, but there's a pretty wide variety. There's a wide variety of other sounds too, like different chuffs, different bells, etc., etc. With ESU Lock Sound, you can download and load other sounds onto it, and you can even make custom ones, but there's a fair bit of technical knowledge required, and you need a special gadget called a lock programmer to make it work. I haven't really successfully done much of that yet. I found that the TCS and the Soundtrax decoders have enough preloaded sounds on them that you can select from that I have more than I'll ever need. So unless you're trying to replicate a very specific real engine with a very specific sound, 9 times out of 10 you won't need custom sounds. There's enough to choose from that you can just use what comes with it. I should look up how many different whistles TCS has. I actually don't know. Yeah, an 1890s to 1920s steam layout would be super cool. This one I see as like a tourist railroad in like the 80s or 90s. So I can run pretty much whatever I like while still having some element of nostalgia to it. But at some point I want to do a proper like 1880s or 1890s layout. Ooh, a Back to the Future concept. That's a good idea. Log car, combine, coach, caboose. Yeah, we can do that. That'd be a fun opportunity to do some switching, actually. And we're probably going to need that siding, so I'm going to back up 7 a bit so we have room. I could just do this by hand, but I think it'd be more fun to do it in scale switching. We're going to have to use the Rio Grande cars. I hope that's okay. I know the color doesn't match. So what was it again? Hello, Lord Vader. How's the Empire doing? Laura Malone, welcome. Got any diesels? I don't have any diesels with sound at the moment. I do have that little Alco switcher on the siding there. We can run that. Yeah, 187 scale DeLorean would be great if I could find one. Actually, I do have a little DeLorean hidden on the layout. I'm surprised nobody's spotted it on these streams yet. It's hard to see from this angle, but it's a flying DeLorean and it's crashed in one of the trees. But it is a little bit too small for scale. Thanks, Dalton. It's just the default TCS WoW sound. I think it's Strasbourg 89's air pump, actually. Alright, let's see. So what is it? Log car, combine, coach, caboose. Okay, so we need one log car and it needs to be at the front of the train. I'm going to put the caboose back over there. We'll pick it up later. Yeah, Hand of God. I tend to default to like the Hand of God switching. But I'm trying to get in the habit of doing more actual switching. Especially now that I found these that you can uncouple KDs really easily with. This is, if the camera will focus. This is like a little tooth cleaning thing. I found them at the grocery store, but they work brilliant for uncoupling KD couplers. At some point, I'd like to try to get the magnetic uncoupling system working too. I have some little rare earth magnets to try. Alright, so I think what I'm going to have to do here... Yeah, the 050 switcher. I think what I'm going to have to do here is drop one log car on the track next to the fence, and then put the rest of the consist back in the yard, and then move the prairie out of the way so I can get the coaches. It's been a while since I did any actual, like, legit switching here. Doubleheader, we can do that in a little bit. Lord Vader, I've tried a toothpick, it doesn't seem to work as well. What really makes this work well is that it has like these little bristles on it. It's like a little tiny version of a pipe cleaner. So you can insert it into the coupler and twist it without it sticking. I find toothpicks, it's a little more difficult. I mean, you can do it with a toothpick. You can also do it with a sharpened pencil, or if you like sharpen like a barbecue skewer, a wooden barbecue skewer, and a pencil sharpener. You can use that. But I've always found those a bit more finicky. This one I find easier because you can push it all the way into the coupler. Laura Malone, I've got a variety of manufacturers on here. I've got some custom ones. The diesel is an Atlas. I have a few Bachmans, a few Roundhouse and Athearn engines. Oh, thanks, Lord Vader. Yeah, that video was a while ago. It's one of those engines that's gone through so many permutations and custom alterations since then that it's barely recognizable. Like, it's got a different boiler on it. I actually did put the original cab back on. And I just put a different pilot and headlight on it recently, too. Ooh, an ET and WNC layout would be super cool. What scale are you doing that in? Let me see, I might have the package here. What are these two things called? Gum Proxibrush. This is what the package looks like, if I can get it to... There we go. So yeah, look for those at the grocery store. You can probably get them on Amazon too. But yeah, I found those super useful for uncoupling KDs. I haven't actually tried them on my teeth. They might be good for that too, but I just use them as uncouplers. Ooh, 0 and 30. That'll be awesome. Bachmann makes the 10-wheeler, right? I'm pretty sure they do. Can't have ET and WNC without the 10-wheeler. Main thing with uncoupling Hades is there has to be a little bit of slack in the train, which is why I usually stop and reverse slightly. Okay, so we'll pick up the log car. Log car, combine, coach, caboose. So we'll pick up the log car, and then we'll gotta move the baggage car out of the way. We can use the prairie to do that, because we gotta get that out of the way anyway. And then combine, coach, we can get those out of the Rio Grande consist. Yeah, easily $1,000 worth of locomotives on here. I don't even want to think about how much money I've spent on trains over the years. Welcome back, Model Rail fan. We're just doing a bit of switching here, trying to put together a Back to the Future 3 consist. Okay, so now we need to move the prairie, and I'll go ahead and have it take that baggage car with it. Couple that. Yeah, for some reason, anything narrow gauge seems to be significantly more expensive. I guess just because it's more of a niche thing, but like, oops, I just uncoupled the wrong car. There we go. Diesel on the Westport line? I've had a few diesels on here. I do still have that green Baldwin diesel switcher. It's down in the cabinet. I don't remember if it ran the last time I tried it, but Westport has a few diesels. They just keep steam around because it's fun. Oh, Quentin, you'll love what I did with the pilot on this 440. Westport absolutely does need a BL2. Technically, I have one. I got an old Proto 2000 one kicking around here somewhere. But yeah, BL2s are super cool. I feel like I remember in one of the videos, I think, one of the museum videos, I think it was the B&O one, I was kind of snarky about a BL2, and ever since then I've kind of felt bad and I've wanted to get one, like, have a BL2 redemption arc. The chuff sync changes between Y-throttle and conventional DCC. Oh, this is TCS that you're doing this with? I don't know. That would be a question for their tech support department, I think. My rarest model, probably the Rivarossi 440 that I've converted to not be tender drive anymore. Okay, let's see, is this line right? Yeah, it is. Rare in terms of like something you can actually buy, though. Probably my brass California Western 45, which is not. What the heck? Oh right, yeah, I forgot. Okay, wait, what's going on here? Oh. Come on. These Pico Electrofrog switches rely on contact. Soundtracks. It's Blue Nami. That is weird. The chuff sync shouldn't differ between the Bluetooth and regular DCC. That's very strange. I would definitely email them about that. I have a number of Blue Nami engines in G scale, and I haven't had that issue. TGM, I bought it a few months ago. I have not gotten it running yet. It needs quite a bit of work. It's just been sitting on the shelf. I'll make a video about it when I eventually get it running, but I do have it. Alright, so now we should be able to pick up the caboose, and we will have ourselves a Back to the Future consist. WPNSC livery, I've had a couple of different ones. I kind of like doing something different on each one, but I kind of try to stick to a general theme of dark green and maroon. Usually maroon for the earlier stuff, dark green for the later stuff, although not always. How different would you say the Athearn 2808 is from the original Roundhouse model? So funny thing about that, this one that we're running right now is actually a hybrid kind of Frankenstein of parts from both versions. So it's weird because this started out as an Athearn one, and I've kind of gradually replaced more and more parts with old Roundhouse stuff. It's really not that different. There are a few important differences. The main thing that changed is the driver axles, because the Athearn one has pickup wipers on all the wheels, whereas the old one was more like a Mantua where it goes through the axles and it's one side of the engine and the other side of the tender. So this one I've had to convert to the old pickup scheme when I swapped the chassis out. The other thing is you cannot swap the axles directly because the old axles are 1/8 of an inch in diameter and the new ones are 3 millimeters, which is very slightly smaller. But you wouldn't want to swap them out anyway because of the difference in pickups. So otherwise, stuff like the rods and everything does swap directly over. The boiler casting is pretty much the same. They've changed some of the details, but you can still swap them back and forth. The cab's pretty much the same, the tender's pretty much the same, although they've changed the chassis a little bit to accommodate a speaker. So there are some differences, but it's very much still the same basic model. Yeah, sure, if nobody stops it for a switch track up ahead for a science experiment. I really wish I could find a 187 DeLorean that I could push on railroad tracks. Yeah, SIR, depending on when it was made, it may have the old MDC chassis or it may have the Athearn one. I think the Athearn one, well, it started when Roundhouse was bought by Athearn, which I think was in like 2005 or something. So if it's from after that, if it's in a green Roundhouse box or an Athearn box, then it'll have the newer axles. If it's in the old, like, yellow Roundhouse box that doesn't say Athearn on it anywhere, then it'll probably have the old axles. But those still run pretty good. How much does this entire layout cost? I don't even want to think about it. I have no clue. At least $1,000, I'm sure. The story behind the River Rossi 440 on the turntable. So that'll be the subject of a video soon. It is a River Rossi 440 that I converted to not be tender drive anymore. So it has a motor in the boiler now. I had to pretty much fabricate a whole new chassis for it, or heavily modify it. I basically carved out the whole center part of the chassis and 3D printed a motor mount and bearing holders for an idler gear. I took the idler gear out of a Rivarossi JW Bowker. And I did all this because I wanted to put DCC and sound in it. So it's a Frankenstein of sorts. It has parts from 3 different eras of the Rivarossi ones in it. It's got some of the Poacher stuff, some of the Rivarossi, some of the IHC. It'll all be covered in the video, but long story short, I put more work into it than is remotely justified for one of these, but I am pretty happy with how it came out, and I did some custom paint and detailing on it too. One a 20.3 DeLorean. The one that I used in my Back to the Future video is probably decently close. Three Rivers Rambler, the thing is the mounts would have to be redesigned for each installation because they were designed around like how I dremeled stuff out of the chassis. It would pretty much have to be custom done for each one, and you need a parts JW Bowker to salvage the gears from, so it's really not something that is an easily repeatable kit bash, unfortunately. Oh, great locomotive chase contest, that would be neat. Maybe we'll do that in a little bit. Although I do want to probably wrap up the stream in the next 40 minutes or so. Yeah, I did see 611, or at least I've seen some of the close-up pictures. I haven't seen the full paint scheme yet. It does run pretty nice, although it doesn't pull very much because the motor takes up most of the space that was previously occupied by the weight. I would say for 9 times out of 10, if you just want a good running old-timey 440, just get the new Bachmann one and save yourself the trouble. Don't even bother trying to fix up something else. But if you have Rivarossis and you really want to modernize them, the first thing I would try is just put a better motor in the tender, but if you really have to have sound, then yeah, I guess you can do this. It's just a ton of work and you're basically scratch building a chassis. Thanks, Oddjob. Yeah, the sounds are pretty cool. I used to be like a hardcore, like plain DC, everything analog, no sound, no nothing. But once I did start getting DCC sound decoders, especially in O-scale, I kind of fell in love with them, and now I'm like on a quest to put sound in everything. I've kind of been converted. Oh, I haven't seen that book. I'll have to get that one. Yeah, the Bachmann is smaller than Rivarossi. The Bachmann is the correct size for the original 1870s prototype. But the Rivarossi one is a closer match for some of the later, like 1880s, 1890s 440s. Moldable tungsten, yeah, that would be interesting to experiment with. The Rivarossi is a bit heavier in stock form. Mine is actually lighter than the Bachmann 440 because I had to take out the weight to make room for the motor. Most modern locomotive on the layout depends. If we're talking modern prototypes, at the moment it's probably this diesel switcher, which is from like the 50s. If we're talking modern model trains, it's probably the Bachmann 060, which is behind the proto one. It's the New York Central one there, which is only a couple years old. Northeast Outdoor Railway Festival. I definitely do want to go to that. I've been talking to my dad to see if he wants to join me because it's Father's Day weekend. But yeah, that looks really cool. And supposedly they let you bring locomotives and run them, so maybe I'll bring one of my Blue Nami G-scale engines and run that. Yeah, John Ott's blog is fantastic. His thorough documentation of his custom paint jobs on these is actually what inspired my paint job on this one. I didn't want to copy his work exactly, but I definitely took a lot of inspiration from it. His website is just such a treasure trove. Yeah, the Mantua Generals are also slightly oversized for the prototype, but they do make a pretty good scale representation of a slightly later 440. Yeah, the Bachmann ones do have the potential to look really, really great. Oh, the speed step commands are different. That's probably what the issue is. Did I take the weights out of the 440's cab? No, I think they're still in there on my Bachmann one. Hello, the new storyteller. Thanks. The mountain backdrop is from a company called Train Junkies that specializes in model railroad backdrops. I don't know if they still make this specific one. But I would assume they probably do. Sound is nice, but not necessary. Yeah, that's... I felt like that way for a long time. It is nice to have. It's not a must-have. Like, I do still enjoy running trains without sound. But it does add a whole other dimension of realism, so I'd like to have it in as many of my engines as possible. I can always mute them if I want to run them without sound. A video comparing the Proto and Bachmann ones, I will probably do that sooner or later. Maybe if I do, well, when I do a review of that Bachmann one, I'll compare it to the Proto one and that. Oldest model I currently own is in the date the model was produced. I was talking about this earlier. It's probably this old Poacher 440, which is the predecessor to the Rivarossi one. It's mostly the same tooling, but it has a slightly different frame. And these were made in the late 60s. Is it hard to ballast? Hard. Well, it's once you know how, it's pretty easy. In one of my older Westport Shelter Cove update videos, I forget which one, but I'll try and track it down. I showed how I ballasted the track on this layout, and it's not too difficult. Let me look that up real quick. Okay, it was Westport and Shelter Cove update number 6, Scenery and Ballast. If you scroll back a bit on my channel, you can find it. But I have video in there on how I did the ballast on this layout. It's pretty straightforward. Yeah, DLT Berkshire. The Franken caboose is quite well known among my train friends. Yeah, the backhead for the 440 does sound interesting. I'll have to look into that for mine. Sealing of the cab roof. Yeah, I don't remember if it was you or somebody else who told me about that, but I did end up adding some weight to the sealing of the cab roof in this Rivarossi one, and it did improve the pulling power quite a bit. I think I was able to squeeze another 1/4 ounce of lead in there. Hardwiring a decoder for a brass locomotive. The main thing is make extra sure that the circuit board isn't going to touch the inside of the brass shell. Because obviously brass is conductive, and it's usually grounded to one rail or the other, so it will short it out. I would say, if you can find a big piece of heat shrink, wrap that around the decoder. Or if it already has one, don't cut it. Other than that, make sure you install a CAN motor. The old open frame motors don't play nice with DCC. And make sure the motor is isolated from the frame. Yeah, model rail fan. So I didn't solder the rail joints on this layout when I first built it because I didn't really think it was necessary. I since wish that I had. I've actually ended up going back and soldering a few of the more problematic ones. But if I was going to do it again, I would solder every single joint. No question about it. All of the electrical problems I've ever had with this layout have been caused by not soldering the rail joints. I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with that, the new storyteller of that particular product. All of the grass and foliage and stuff on here is woodland scenics, turf, and clump foliage in various different shades of green. I just bought a few different shades and mixed them all together. So the ground I first laid down a layer of the Woodland Scenics Earth Blend turf, and then intermittently sprinkled some of the green blend on top of that to look like sort of patchy grass, and I went heavier with it on the areas that would be like out in the sunshine, and a little bit lighter in the areas that are like near the engine house where there'd be a lot of stuff dripping on the ground. that might hinder the grass growing. And I sprinkled some gravel around there too. If I was going to do that again, I would probably use some real dirt to get a bit more of a realistic texture. Hello, Chief 2901. The new Storyteller, yes, this is the Atlas turntable. I'm going to replace it eventually with a custom 3D printed one. I used this one because it was the only one I could find that was the right size for this space. It's decent for the price, but it definitely has some limitations. The new Storyteller, I put a motor on this one. I replaced the handle with... I bought the Atlas motor kit for it that fits inside the little shed, and then I replaced the motor in that with a quieter one, which is why it's sticking out of the wall. It's kind of fudged. It's not really an ideal system. Excuse me. I'm gonna build something else at some point. Yeah, the 440 by the station does remind me a bit of the Wilmington Western one as well. It's probably the closest thing you can get an HO scale. It's a Bachmann Spectrum. Well, this one, they did a Baldwin version and a Richmond version. This is a mix of parts from both. But it's a pretty neat little engine. They're not made anymore, but you can find them on eBay. And actually, I think you were there when I bought one at a train show, so I do have another one in the box. Engine yard into the roundhouse. Yeah, I've thought about that. I just like having the engines being visible for the sake of the videos and the streams. I feel like it would... Hello, Ricardo. Welcome. I feel like I like being able to see them, and it would be much less visually interesting to have it all enclosed. Jared, most of the G-Scale stuff is currently packed away because I don't have anywhere to run it, unfortunately. I do have some G-Scale videos coming out that I've already filmed and haven't edited yet, though. Jared Games, the Westport and Shelter Cove, I've kept the lore pretty ambiguous because I know a lot of the fans like to come up with their own stories for it, but I see it as basically, the general concept is loosely based on the California Western Railroad in like the early 90s. There's a Pentrex video about that. So it started out as like a local freight / logging railroad. I haven't really done as much of the logging aspect on the Westport and Shelter Cove because it takes a lot of space to model all that stuff. But I see it as like a local short line, and then like when other lines were dieselizing, the Westport, instead of, well, they bought a few diesels, but they mostly would just buy up all the steam engines that the other lines were selling cheap, and run those and just keep them maintained and running indefinitely. So it's obviously a tourist attraction as well. Jared, I'm thinking 1990s because I have cars, like automobiles on the layout. And like most of them are like 60s through 80s era. But there are some of the locomotives that go back to the 1890s. So it ends up being like kind of a mix of different eras. It's mostly just any excuse to run whatever I want. Eventually, it might be cool to backdate it to like the 1890s, but for now, I like being able to have a mix of different eras. And I like the tourist railroads. New Storyteller, yes, I am a Doctor Who fan. I do have a TARDIS on there. That TARDIS is actually just a Christmas ornament. I just took the hook off of it. Favorite era of Doctor Who is probably the Peter Capaldi era, but the whole, like, Christopher Eccleston through David Tennant, Matt Smith, Peter Capaldi, that's sort of my favorite era. I haven't watched too many of the newer ones, and I haven't watched too many of the old... I've seen a couple seasons of the 70s ones, but they're pretty cheesy. So, like, the 2005 through 15-ish era, up to the end of Peter Capaldi's run, is kind of the era that I like. Yeah, G-Scale is awesome, but it takes up a lot of space. I do want to build, like, an outdoor layout eventually. Yeah, Red Dead. Sorry, just chiming in on that conversation. Tsunami 2 is my preferred decoder now. I do still like TCS WoW sound, it's just a bit pickier with like motors and gearing and what you install it in. If you can get wow sound in a locomotive where it's happy, it's great. It does have the best sound quality in the industry right now. But Tsunami has a lot more finely adjustable stuff. So Tsunami you can make work in pretty much anything. Wow sound is a bit pickier. But I have a mix of both on the way out. Yes, DLT, my Atlantic is based on... I don't think it's actually lettered as 460, but I think it is supposed to be an E6. Drago, this is HO scale. Yeah, the first Doctor's TARDIS is cool. Yeah, N scale I'm thinking is going to be a little bit later, like transition era, because I have a Bachmann 280 and an F unit that I want to run on it. Renewed. Now, G scale is large for a model. It's small for a train. Model rail fan. Yeah, wow sound. I would say try and find an opportunity to hear it in person before you invest a significant amount of money in it or any other. Because it definitely does. It definitely has an advantage in like the crispness and quality of the sound. But it's just kind of limited in the settings and how well it adapts to odd installations. Huh, interesting, Crazy Spud. I didn't realize any of the structures were different between the different railroads on line maps. I've only ever really spent a lot of time on Pine Valley. I think I did have an Aurora Falls save at one point. It's just on the bigger maps it takes so long to get anywhere. And Pine Valley seems to be the least buggy. Double head the 440 and haul all of your cars. I could probably do that. I don't know, I'm probably going to wrap up the stream in the next 20 minutes or half an hour. I'm getting pretty tired, and I got stuff to do tomorrow. I'm still trying to get... Oh, right, yeah, the 7 in the Great Locomotive Chase Contest. Let's go ahead and do that, and then maybe I'll wrap up the stream. I don't know if we'll have time to do the giant, long doubleheader tonight. Robert, can you remind me, what's the order of cars in the Great Locomotive Chase Contest? Let's see if I have the right ones to at least approximate it. Ricardo, no, we're not doing a call in the background this time, because last time it was pretty chaotic, and I had a hard time keeping up with both the Discord chat and the stream chat. So I'm thinking we'll just do the Discord chat when we're playing games and there's fewer people watching, so the stream chat isn't moving so fast. Alright, have a good one, John Blitz. Yes, that is a DNRGW consolidation. It's one of the Ather and Roundhouse ones. This is from the older production run from the mid-2000s, but I think it's identical to the new one. Red Dead, yeah, I do have a little bit of almost every scale. I do actually have some S-scale American Flyer stuff stashed away, I just don't have a locomotive. I only have some track and some freight cars. Oh yeah, the LED in the lighthouse does work, it's just unplugged right now. I'll plug it in. I had it unplugged because my bed's in the next room over and there's no door, so the light kind of keeps me awake. 3 boxcars and 2 passenger coaches, okay. I only have 2 boxcars on the layout. Let me see if I can rustle up a third one. One sec. Alright, I found another boxcar. This is actually one of the ones Robert sent me. It has a missing piece of the walkway on top. I have it, I just haven't glued it back on. But we can run it like this temporarily. And to save a bit of time, I'm not going to do all the switching again. I'm just going to do this. So it was 3 boxcars and what, 2 coaches? Okay. Westport RDC. I've thought about that. I actually did review the Rapido RDC and run it on this layout a couple years back on the BC Hobbies channel. It's just really long for these curves. Jared, I'm in central Massachusetts. Bumblebee paint scheme kept the drivers and wheels and trucks black. Honestly, I kind of like the silver. It's a little bit gaudy, but I'm a sucker for 19th century ornate stuff, even though it's actually not authentic to 19th century Rio Grande. But yeah, I mean, it looked good with black wheels too, but the silver wheels are actually one of the things I really like about it. Let's pretend I didn't do that. Alrighty, how's this gonna work? Which 440 should we use for this? Jared, I can run this layout DC or DCC. New Storyteller, this is a mix of stuff from all different eras. Oh, Vanderbilt Tender, those are nice. Yeah, bright liveries with lots of colors. I never really was able to get into British stuff. I'm not sure why. It just, something about like 19th century American trains just have a certain charm for me. But I do love the bright colors on them. Unless they're like, the yellow is about as garish as I'd want it to get. Sometimes they go a little too far. But like, Denver and Rio Grande Bumblebee, Southern Green. Oldest 440 I have is probably going to be the Rivarossi. So we'll move this onto the other track. Oops. Wrong engine. There we go. That's forward. I mean, technically I do have an older 440, the Bachmann one, but it's not running at the moment. And that was way too fast. Northwestern PA, okay, yeah, so that's a bit of a drive for me. Okay, I have to know what's cursed about the E unit. Oh right, he's in my Discord server, so I can just ask him that. Model Rail Fan, yeah, I've done a lot of work to this one. Converted it to not be tender drive, so it has a motor in the engine now, which meant there was room for a sound decoder in the tender, so it has a Soundtracks decoder in there. And we've just had an accident. Hold on. It's a Sugar Cube speaker mounted in the floor under where the motor used to be. How did that derail? The switch was set correctly. Oh, you know what? I bet the trip pin on these couplers is too low. Okay, how would you feel about 2 boxcars? I'll have to make some adjustments to this one before we run it again. Woodland Scenic sound system? No, I haven't seen that. Rock Gamers, have you tried the newer Bachmann ones? Those are really good. Yeah, I'll have to look up that Woodland Scenic sound effect system. I haven't heard of that. Yeah, okay, Trucking Industries. Yeah, I'll take a look at that. It sounds like an interesting engine. That'll be cool to deal with rail. Rock Gamers, Bachmann has pretty much fixed their gear issues now. I don't think anything made since about 2010 or 2011 has had the gear issues. They switched to a different type of plastic for the gears, and that solved it. And they don't have the split axles anymore either. But the new tooling 440s, they were introduced in, I think, 2015. So they're completely different from all the old crappy Bachmann stuff. They've got metal axles, they've got good gears, the motor's in the engine, so there's room for sound in the tender. I think you can even get them with sound. But yeah, they're really sweet little engines. I definitely recommend them. And there's a bunch of 3D printed detail parts that you can get to really trick them out and make them super detailed. They even pull decently. I have a review of them on the channel. I think if you go back a little ways, you can find it. It's called like Bachmann 440 an American Classic or something like that. Came out 2 years ago. But yeah, I really like them. If I was going to do a 19th century layout, it would be populated mostly with those. But yeah, pretty much everything Bachmann currently makes is decent. I think they've finally gotten rid of all the crappy stuff out of their lineup. The only thing I wouldn't buy is the N-Scale 060, because that still has split axles. But everything else, I'm pretty sure they've gotten rid of them. Bachmann has come a long way. Like, in the past 10 or 15 years, they've completely turned themselves around from what they used to be. Yeah, Buster Keaton would be cool. I remember when I was a kid, I had one of the Bachmann old tooling 440s, and I did a photo recreation of Buster Keaton's stunt with the railroad ties on the front of the engine. I wish I could find that. I had a little figure attached to the front. Ooh, you've got the red Shay. I'm looking forward to seeing that. I did see one of the new Bachmann Shays at Amherst, and they do look really good, and the metal gears will be a huge improvement. Oh, Rock Gamer, so you've got one of the DCC ones. Okay, yeah, those Those are really nice little engines. I don't think any of those have had the gear issues. The only issues I've seen on those are with the wire harness to the tender, which pretty much all Bachmann engines have had since the 90s, which is not ideal, but as long as you're not picking it up by the wires and you're careful with it, you're usually okay. On mine, I usually will cut off the little pin that the drawbar goes in and put a screw in there. And then they're basically permanently coupled, and then you don't have to worry about it because the drawbar takes the strain. Lord Vader, I think it was a few months ago now, Bachmann announced they're doing a new run of the 3-truck Shay. Model Railfan Bachmann revised the HO scale 060 in about 2009. They got rid of the plastic axle spacer thingies. It's got metal axles now. It's a huge improvement. Still has the same shell, but they also introduced the sound-equipped version that has a newly tooled shell and a new tender, and I've actually got one of those right here. They're really neat little engines, and they run great. That has pretty much solved all the problems of the old one. I'll move my proto out of the way so you can see it. But this here is the new Bachmann sound-equipped 060, and it's really nice. Rock Gamers. If the previous owner put in a stay alive, that'll help the performance a lot. The one Achilles heel of those that I have found is they are a little bit sensitive to dirty track, but the stay alive should help with that. Jared, the Bachmann Prairie is just the basic 060 with the leading and trailing trucks added. I don't think the leading and trailing trucks will fit on the new version. I think they changed the chassis a little bit, or on the sound-equipped version. You can still buy the train set one. Oh yeah, it has the metal axles. Yeah, I think the upper half of the frame is still split. It is kind of annoying to work on, but I found they're usually reliable enough that you don't ever really have to open them up, unless they're really thrashed. Thank you, Rock Gamers. Yeah, the Canadian Maritimes were one of my inspirations with this. I was also very much inspired by the Pacific Northwest. It's kind of a hybrid of both coasts. But I did definitely take some inspiration from the Maritimes for it as well. Jared Games, I think the Road Name Specific one still has like the same motor as the basic one, but pretty much everything else is new. I'm not 100% sure though, I haven't taken it apart yet. We can run that one actually if we want. And it comes with a Soundtracks Econami decoder, which is pretty decent. Laura, what's your request? I'm going to end stream pretty soon, but we have time to run one or two more trains. I do love white walls. They just make the wheels pop. It's like, if anybody's seen Cars, everybody's seen Cars, but it's like the scene with Luigi. Black wall tires, they blend into the pavement. But white wall tires, they say, look at me, here I am, love me. Oh, run the diesel? Yeah, I can do that. It doesn't have sound, but it does run. I'm just going to switch these out by hand because the turntable's not working. I'll put the regular freight train consist back together for this. One of these days I will get around to putting sound in this diesel, but I have not yet. Model rail fan, yes. The road name specific one does have tender pickups and metal wheels. The regular train set version doesn't. Lord Vader, yeah, I'm still doing DCC commissions. I've got a few in the backlog right now, but you can email me, redoaktrains@gmail.com, and we can talk. Yeah, Jared, we can do the double hitter from hell. I'll probably not do actual switching, though. I'll just use the 050 method. Silent stuff is not bad. It is. It does have a certain charm to it. It's nice being able to hear like the sounds of the wheels on the track, especially with metal wheels. We'll take the diesel for a few laps, and then we can do the double hitter from hell, and then we'll wrap it up. Maybe I'll throw that 060 on the double hitter so we can see that run too. Oh, that'll be cool, Gilded Rail. I don't remember which one this is. I think it's an S2. An SD70 Mac, I think, would have some trouble on these curves. I think the only 6-axle diesel I've ever run on here was an Alco Century, and it made it around, but it was struggling a little bit. Oh, right, Lord Vader. Yeah, I think I remember you mentioning that on Red Dead stream. Yeah, send me an email and we can figure that out. And quiet is nice, especially at night, and especially if you're listening to something else like music or a podcast. I usually have something on in the background when I'm doing stuff. Sometimes it's just like random heist videos, sometimes it's music. Oh yeah, the O-scale layout. I do need to make a video on that. Right now it's kind of messy because there's tools and stuff all over it. But I do want to do an update on that pretty soon. I do like a update on the DCC situation on there. A person, hi, welcome. Unfortunately, you just caught us close to the end of the stream. I think we're only going to run one more train after this, and then I'm going to wrap it up. I do want to put sound in this engine eventually. I'll probably do, probably either WoW Sound or Tsunami. WoW Sound has better Alco sounds, but I like the way Tsunami operates a bit more. You can fine-tune stuff better. Interesting, the Bachmann SD40 takes the curves and the Athearn one doesn't. I would not have expected that. Alright, well, it's 11:30. I should probably wrap it up pretty soon, but let's go ahead and run that cursed doubleheader with every single car we've got. We'll see what... Actually, you know what? Let's see if this little diesel will pull it. I'm kind of curious, because it is pretty heavy. It's got a die-cast frame, so it might be able to just pull every single thing. I'm going to move the Prairie by hand because it's in the way of the passenger cars. Put it here. It'd be pretty funny if we could pull all my cars with this one tiny little engine. Oh yeah, doubleheader. Well, we'll do a doubleheader, but I want to try this first. Tender-driven Tyco 280. Honestly, I would say no. If you really want to do that, I would swap it onto an IHC 280 chassis because those use the same shell, but they're not tender drive. Oh, that didn't work. Well, it handles that fine. Let's try adding the Rio Grande cars on there. Good night, Rock Gamers. Yeah, I actually have a couple of O-scale 440s that I want to talk about. Hello, Johnny. You've caught us right at the end of the stream. Yeah, those Tyco, like the Chattanooga ones or the Clementines, I'm pretty convinced that half of them didn't even work out of the box. Ooh, you got to drive the Nevada Northern RS2. I want to do that someday. Yeah, alcoholic. Alcos are pretty darn cool. They have so much character. I should do a video on my O-scale RS1. I just recently put Blue Nami in it. Hello, Wawa. You just caught us at the very end of the stream, but you can watch the VOD when it's over. Okay, so yeah, this little switcher pulls everything, no problem whatsoever. We're gonna have to make things more interesting, throw a couple of steam engines on here. Yeah, precision scheduled railroading. Except this one hasn't had a disastrous accident yet. That's how you know it's not true precision scheduled railroading. Alright, let's throw the two 440s on here and see what happens. Oh, actually, we can't do the two 440s because neither of them has a functional front coupler. Well, let's do the Bachmann 060 and 1440. First of all, I have to see if this will pull it by itself. I'm fairly confident this will not work, but we'll find out. Yeah, I didn't think so. Three Rivers Rambler, sometimes stuff takes a while to upload to email. It'll probably send in a few minutes or hours, but if not, you can try sending it again. Yeah, Dart Santa Fe and Classic Model Trains are both really good at that. Okay, so we're gonna need... Actually, we could throw the Prairie on. Well, no, I said I'd run the 440, so I'll do that. So I'm going to start that going and then select 7. And then just speed that up until they're roughly matched. Oh. And now 7's slipping. Are they both slipping? I think they might both be slipping. Yeah, I think they're still both slipping a little bit. Oh yeah, we do need to zoom the camera out. Three Rivers Rambler, it's just some random brass pile that I found in a parts box. I don't know what it's from, but it looks good. Model Railfan, unfortunately I don't have the green one anymore. The green paint started flaking off, so I ended up putting a different shell on it and selling it. We might have to add a third locomotive to this. Yeah, they're both still slipping. I'm gonna add number 8. See if I can do this swap on the fly. I'm going to use the other throttle so I can adjust these both at the same time. Whoop, I'm getting more in the way. Oops, right. Come on. Alright, I'm having a hard time getting them all perfectly matched, but we do technically have a triple header right now. Yeah, some jerk in the caboose left a handbrake on. Railroads online, am I right? Unfortunately, I can't add the Atlantic because it doesn't have a working front coupler, and we've already got one locomotive with no front coupler on here. We'd have to swap it out for one. But I think 3 is plenty, honestly. Red Dead, I'm not sure how many this will handle. The amp meter on here is actually reading almost nothing, but I suspect that's not accurate. Oh yeah, you know what? Okay. Okay, for the meme, let's go ahead and add the prairie onto the back. Because why not? As long as we're being silly, we might as well be extra silly. We gotta catch up with it first. What's the meme? Gonna tell my kids this was the Great Locomotive Chase? Did it couple? I think it did. Oh, I'm seeing some of the coaches start to get a little bit antsy. Uh-oh. We've got our first derailment. Hold on, I'll fix it. See, this is kind of unfair because the Prairie has a traction tire and none of the others do. Okay, 8 is pushing. Let me slow it down a second. Oh, we got the same car derailed again. Ah! Oh dear. Okay. You didn't see that, but you know what? Okay, I think that might be enough. Oh, you couldn't hear the sound effect, but that's a fender bender. Wow, okay, that's actually pretty impressive. I need to take a picture of this. This is what you call an ad for KD couplers. Alright, let's bring in the 050 to do some rescue operations here. Lost the roof for the baggage car. There we go. Alright, well, I think we might have found the limit of what we can run all at once. If only we had the copyright to play Smells Like Kenosha. Monorail fan, no, it looks like everything's okay. I'll have to take a closer look in a bit, but it doesn't look like anything broke. Yeah, that was precision scheduled railroading. Yeah, the helper doomed it from the start. The fact that I was trying to re-rail stuff as it was moving, I think, is what really doomed it. That was just asking for trouble. Amazingly, the entire freight consist stayed on the track. It was just the passenger cars that lost it. And thanks to the magic of KD couplers, that one coach didn't technically fall off. I say that, and now these KDs won't couple. Oh, they're just not one. Right, there we go. I'm just bummed that the initial derailment was off camera, because that would have been funny. Alright, I think that's everything back on the track. And number 8 can bring it back into the station. Yeah, well, thankfully no engines fell off. No, don't worry about it, Rock Gamers, you're fine. Ultimately, it wasn't actually the helper that derailed it. It was me trying to re-rail stuff while it was moving. Yeah, 262s are friend-shaped. I do have a kill switch. That's what I hit over here. I have a main power switch that turns off the whole layout. Oh wait, you can use the Heiss Railroads Online soundtrack as long as you credit him? Dang, I'm gonna have to start doing that. Prevent derailments on switches. Use good quality switches, make sure they're tuned and adjusted properly, and don't run through them the wrong way, I guess. Alright folks, well, on that bombshell, I think it's time to end. Thank you all for watching. Next week, well, before the next stream, I'm going to the Providence Northern Club layout, and I'm taking a bunch of this Westport stuff with me. So I'll be making a video there. I don't know if I will have the video edited and posted by the time of next stream. But if I do, I will see you in the comments on that video, and if not, I will see you next Tuesday. Well, I'll see you next Tuesday either way, hopefully. But yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. Eat your vegetables, don't text and drive, and don't do what I just did. If you're going to re-rail something, stop the train first. Thank you for watching, everyone. Cheers. Have a good night, have a good evening, have a good morning, have a good afternoon. Yeah, I guess that's it. Cheers, everyone.